The exterior styling of the Tucson actually kind of caught me off guard when I first saw it. It has a much meaner look with some different body moldings and things like that. Like the lines that are cut in all throughout the body here are fairly sharp, and it really makes this thing stand out from other vehicles that are in this class as well. Now, I did mention this thing is available either front wheel or all-wheel drive, and that's going to depend on which trim level of the vehicle that you're in, and then whether you're in Canada or the US. Now, looking at the tires, it is available in either a 17 up to a 19 inch, again, depending on your trim. Now, this specific one, we're in Canada, and it's the preferred trim level of the vehicle. So we do have a 17-inch tire there, and we do have a series of different rim choices and things like that, again, depending on your model. But one of the great things about the new Tucson is the styling of the front end here. It looks really, really sharp. Now, moving towards the front end of the vehicle, we've got our LED daytime, nighttime running lamps, our headlamps there as well. And it actually is kind of neat. Like when you see these things lit up at night, it is unbelievable the way that it looks. It's funny, I was actually out a couple days ago with my girlfriend and she was like, "What is this car?" Because we saw a new Tucson rolling up behind us. Because it had this beautiful illuminated grille and it just looks incredible from other things I've seen out on the road. So I love the styling elements that Hyundai is going for in their newer vehicles. We do have our lamps there, but one thing to point out, we don't have fog lamps available inside of this vehicle whatsoever. Now, moving forward, we do have this gorgeous black grille there, Hyundai badge in the front as well. And then moving down a little bit more, we do have a nice silver look along the bottom of the bumper there. Again, moving towards that neater, more aggressive styling that Hyundai went for inside of the new Tucson. Taking a peek underneath the hood of the vehicle. So we're gonna pop this thing first and moving into the front end. So just above the Hyundai badge there, we do have a little lever there. We're just gonna move that, and here we are. So taking a peek, we do have our 2.5 liter engine there, and it's a naturally aspirated, so a non-turbocharged engine. There are technically 3 available choices. So there's the 1.6 turbo normal hybrid, and then the plug-in hybrid as well. But looking at power inside of this thing, it's 187 horsepower and 178 pound-feet of torque. We've got easy access for our fluids. We can easily check the oil there as well if we need to. Easy access to the battery up along the very top. And if you're kind of handy yourself, you could actually change out the lights and things like that, the filters, etc., very, very easily if you need to. We do have our fire guard along the top. We've got our nice engine cover there, hiding off some of those components underneath. But I do think they have done a great job at the redesign of this vehicle. Very easy to get into different components there as well. So whether you decide to do the maintenance yourself or just get Hyundai to take care of it for you, which I definitely recommend because then you don't have to worry about doing anything yourself, but just make sure you're maintaining your vehicle regularly so that it does have the most optimal performance. Now, moving into the first row of the Tucson, it is very nice in here. Now, this is just the preferred trim level of the vehicle. So we would have the option for the N line, and then there's a few others available there as well, but very, very nice feel for the seat. Oh, that's super comfortable. The backrest is great. Along the side, we do have a few different options. We can adjust our lumbar support. We can move that backrest forwards and backwards. And then we also do have a power adjustable seat there as well. So we can move it forwards, backwards, up and down to our liking. With the seat down and back all the way, I've got about 3.5, maybe 4 inches of headspace there. So a little bit taller, you'll probably be able to comfortably sit inside of this thing. Now, we do have a few different options along the door there as well. So we've got our unlock lock buttons, window up and down, as well as the ability to adjust our side view mirrors. We can either increase or decrease the brightness of that cluster screen, turn our traction control on and off as well. And then adjusting the steering wheel is also straightforward. So it's a telescopic manual wheel as well, so we can easily adjust from there. And overall, this is nice. Now, I did mention the seat has a few different ways we can adjust it. The headrest itself is locked into place. So we could move it up and down, but we don't have the option of tipping it forward at all. So it's just a 2-way manual adjust inside of this trim of the vehicle. One of the interesting parts about the cluster is when you get into some of the higher trim levels, you would also have a fully digital cluster screen, which it looks so nice. Like I was in the Santa Cruz recently and it had that full digital display and I'm like, it looks so good. The technophile in me was like, this is amazing. Love it. But having said that, the regular dash inside of this also does look fairly nice. Next up, taking a peek at the steering wheel for the vehicle. So we're going to go through all of these different buttons and figure out how everything works. So starting off, we've got our stick on the left-hand side, and that's going to let us figure out what's going on with the running lamp. So we're just going to rotate this little part right on the end of the stick here. It's going to flip you over there, so we're going to rotate that in order to be able to change out what's going on to the running lamps there. So we do have a few different options. I honestly always just recommend keeping to the auto setting. It's super straightforward. It's automatically going to flip us between our daytime or our nighttime running lamps as necessary. We can also pull in towards us for our high beams, and then we can push away to get our auto light setting there instead. So what that means is that if our high beams are on later on at night and the vehicle senses an oncoming vehicle, it's going to dim them for us and then bring them back on again. Flip away to turn that off, etc. Stick along the right-hand side is going to be for our wipers, so we can control our wiper speed there. We can get our front windshield wipers going, and then right along the tip of the stick there is going to be for our rear wipers instead. We're going to pull in towards us to get that front windshield wiper fluid going, and we're going to push away in order to get the rear wiper fluid going instead. So very straightforward there. Looking at all the different buttons, we have a series of different options that are available. So this very first one there, inside of the base screen, like what we've got here, we're going to push that one. You see a little error message come up because this is going to be our button for our Siri and our Google Assistant. So if we were hooked up through Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, we could push this button in order to get to our assistant there. Inside of some of the higher trims, so the ones with navigation in the screen instead, this button would let us change songs, radio stations, and navigate using our voice as well. We do have a mode button along the side there. So as you can see, that's going to let us change between AM, FM, Sirius XM, etc. So all of our different sources, which is a great thing. We do also have our button along the bottom right-hand side here, and that's going to be a customized button. So as you see there, we push that and we can literally customize it and let us figure out what we'd like it to do. So we can reject a call, we can change it to privacy mode, and a few other things. So we've got a few other buttons and things like that that we can create specifically. So we've got one on the screen there, and then we've got our two on the steering wheel. So we've got some flexibility as to what those buttons actually do. We can answer or hang up on a phone call there as well. And then we've got our volume rocker, so we can easily go volume up, down, etc. We can push this thing in the middle in order to be able to turn it off. And then we can also go up and down there in order to be able to change between our presets, or we can press and hold in order to be able to seek between different stations as well. So it is nice, we've got so many options there. The pad on the right-hand side, we've got a button along the very top there, which is going to let us change between our different screens there inside of our cluster. Well, the buttons on the right-hand side here are going to be for our adaptive or our smart cruise control system. So we can turn the smart cruise control system on there. So as we're driving, we push this button to turn it on, and then we can set by going up or down. So we can increase or decrease, and then we can increase or decrease 1 kilometer or 1 mile per hour at a time. And then we also do have this button along the bottom right-hand side, which is our distance indicator. So how close or how far are we away from the vehicle that's in front of us? The next one over is our lane centering system, so our lane follow assist. Now that's different from our lane keep assist. So the lane keep assist, if we start to veer over into a lane, we'll get a gentle nudge back into our lane, whereas the follow assist, it literally essentially is going to be self-driving. So as you start to veer over into a lane without signaling, what's going to happen is it's actually going to keep us balanced in our lane. So if you lose attention for a second, it's going to keep you balanced in your lane as long as it recognizes the lane marking. So these two systems can work in conjunction with each other, which is always a nice thing. Now we do have a few other buttons there as well. So we've got our OK button, and we can also go up and down. And that's going to be for that little cluster screen. So we kind of move up and down. You can see us going between a few different options there. But let's start off with, I guess we were on the front page there. Perfect. So we've got our settings there, and we've got our attention level. So this one, if we start to veer over too many times without signaling, we're going to get a little counter there. And if it happens too many times in a short period, it's going to tell us we should probably take a break. And then we've also got some additional settings, but we'll get to that one in a second. We've got some accumulated info there as well. So our drive info, our since refueling, etc. And we can literally just press and hold the OK button there in order to be able to reset everything. So all of our trip counters, etc. We do have our auto start stop there. And then we also have our kilometers. So we can go kilometers, miles per hour, etc. We can switch over to some user settings. So we've got a few different ways to get to settings, because if we saw, we've got this option, we can press and hold OK to jump into some other settings there as well. But going through this screen, we have some different options. So we've got our driver assistant. So same things that we just saw, our warning timers and our warning volume. So do we want a high, medium, or low volume? We've got our driver attention warning. So it's a useful one because if we're not paying attention, it's going to let us know we should probably take a break. But you could also turn these things off if you wanted to. Our forward safety, so active assist. If the vehicle senses a potential collision in front of us, it's going to actively brake for us with this setting on, or we'll get a warning or nothing will happen. We've got our lane safety, same idea. So we've got our assist, we can get a warning, or we can turn that setting off as well. And that's the one that's going to nudge us back into our lane. We've got our blind spot safety. So our safe exit warning is great because if we go to open up our door, so we're opening up and there's an obstacle there, it's going to let us know of a potential obstacle there, which is great. So we can turn that warning on or off if we want to. We can get an active warning or assist, or we can have nothing happen there instead. So we've got a few options there. Our parking safety or cross traffic alert, if we're going to back up and the vehicle senses a potential collision, it's going to let us know about that one. Moving back again, and that's our driver assistance settings. We've got some options for our cluster. So we've got our wiper light display. We've got some warning messages there, as well as a welcome sound when we go to turn the car on. We've got some different options for wallpaper, which we can just kind of make out a few small changes there in the screen. So it gives us a few different metallic looks and things like that. Moving back, we do have some options for our lights there as well. So illumination, we can increase or decrease the brightness of the screen there. We can do it through this menu if we wanted to, or there also is a little button along the side there so we can increase or decrease that way instead as well if we'd like. And moving down a little bit, so we've got our turn signal there. So we go once and it goes 3 times, or we can have it off where it's just a single instead. So we can go 1, 3, 5, or 7 flashes. You've got a few different options there. Our headlight delay, so when we go to lock the vehicle, do the lamps stay on for a moment, yes or no? High beam assist is a great one, and that's one where if we flip away, our lights will turn on or off, etc. So we can easily adjust that one as necessary there. Moving back, we've got some door settings as well. Our auto lock, we've got 2 different options. So as we go to shift the vehicle, it'll automatically lock the doors for us, or it'll be enabled on speed, so as you actually start driving away. Same idea with our auto unlock. So when do we want the doors to become unlocked? When we shift it into park, when we turn the vehicle off, or do we want it to never auto unlock and we have to manually unlock ourselves? 2 button press unlock is an option there as well. Convenience settings, we've got our rear occupant alert. So if we go to turn the vehicle off for a moment and we open up the door, so you can see there, we've got a little message letting us know that we should check the rear seats. So a great little added safety setting there. And turning the vehicle back on again. I am welcome screen. Hello, hello, hello. All right, and let's move back down. Where were we? Cluster lights, door, convenience settings. Welcome light. So we've got our driver approach lamps there as well on the outside. Wireless charging, we can disable it there as well if we'd like to. And we've got our auto rear wipers. So this is a useful one. I always recommend turning this thing on. And the reason why is because if we've got our front wipers going and then we put the vehicle into reverse, it's automatically going to turn our rear wipers on for us as well. So it's definitely a nice thing. We've got our service intervals there as well. We've got some different units, so kilometers, miles per hour, temperature, Celsius, Fahrenheit, fuel economy, liters, kilometers per 100, etc. And we've also got our tire pressure units. Moving back, and we can also do a reset. So if you've kind of played around with this a little bit too much, you can reset it and bring it back to our factory default screen there instead. That's going to be the basics for our user settings, but we saw some of the other settings here. So we hop inside, and these are just going to be some of our base settings in comparison to this option where we can get to all of our settings instead. Back across one more, we've got our tire pressure, and we can also see what's going on with each wheel. So if we get wheel slippage and things like that, this screen is going to let us know exactly which wheel is getting what amount of power, which is a nice thing. The highlights are amazing. Like we've got those silver highlights along the door, second and first row, and those same silver highlights like what we saw in the bumper, the front and rear bumper there. It's like they've carried forward inside of the vehicle, like along the actual cluster and the dash there as well. We've got our nice silver highlights down the screen, up and around. It's married into that steering wheel there as well, and it does look very sharp. Now, inside of some trims, so the lower trims, it's going to be a regular key. Inside of the higher trims, it's going to be a push button start instead. There we go. Now, the push button start is an interesting one because we've got a few different ways that we can actually use the push button start. If you don't hit the brake first, so if you have the vehicle off and you just push the push button start, it puts us into what's known as accessory mode. So it turns on the media screen, turns on a few other things as well, but you can't actually drive. You have to actually hit the brake, hit that accessory mode button there. There we go. Push button start and engine start is there. So it is nice to know if you just want to sit down and listen to your radio, you've got that flexibility. If you're doing something like a drive-in movie, you can sit in accessory mode for a short period of time, but I definitely recommend turning the vehicle on every now and again just to make sure you don't end up with a dead battery. So something to think about there. Oh, rear wiper is going there right now. Aha. All right. Next up, let's take a peek at the media screen for the vehicle. So we're going to dive in deep and figure out exactly how everything works, set up Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, etc. So first thing to point out, we do actually have our 4-way blinkers along the very top there. And then we've got a series of different buttons that let us change between a few different options. So as of right now, our radio's off. We can button press this. So we can literally push this in to turn the radio on or off, or we can press the radio along the very top there. So we can go radio and change between AM, FM, Sirius, XM, etc. simply by pressing this if we'd like to. We can also tune this way, so we can tune this way if we want to. We can also tune this way if we want to go that route instead. So we've got a few different options that are available. Now, one of the interesting things, as you see there, we've got a series of different starred stations and things like that. So we can easily press this in order to be able to save it as a preset. So we can easily save it or delete it as presets there. So as you saw, very, very simple. And we've got our base setup button. So we'll get to these different options in a moment, but starting off with the radio. So we do have all of the available options that we've got saved for our presets there. And if we want to delete one, we just move to it, we unstar it, and then it deletes it as a preset. And it's literally that simple in order to be able to save a preset too. So if you wanted to, you could literally just go, and if we just kind of tune to a different station, local rock station here, 94.9, we're going to save that, and that's now a default station there instead. So it is very straightforward. Band, we can change between AM, FM, Sirius, XM this way, or we just press the radio button there to change between all of these different options instead. We've got our HD radio and then a base menu there as well. So we do have the option of turning the display off completely if we wanted to. Press it in order to turn it back on. We can go to our main menu there again, and we can enter the station that way. So we can tune this way if we want to, or we can tune using this instead. So same thing, we tune to a station, we hit OK, and it's tuned to that station instead. So we've got a few different options there. We can look at all of the available stations in our geographic area, which is a nice thing. So if you're new to an area, you're not really sure what music you can listen to, we go there and we can literally swipe up and down between all available stations, and then we can just star out all of our favorite stations to save them as presets if we want to. We've got our info, we can delete all of our presets. We've got some base sound settings there as well. So we've got some options that we can get in here, but we'll cover up some basics. We've got our positioning there, so we can literally adjust what's going on with the positioning. So where do we want the focus of the audio to be? We've got our sound tuning there as well, so we can literally look at our treble, mid-range, bass and change these things out. These are pretty good settings as is, so our treble actually down a little bit is normally better, mid-range is good, and then bass is cranked, which honestly, this is a good option for our setup. We've got our driving there, and the beeping that we get here, if that beeping drives you nuts, you can turn it off there as well if you want to, so you've got that flexibility. We've got driving setting, or sort of guidance there as well. So we've got our park safety priority and our driving priority, which means that our system volume is going to lower, so our audio is going to lower down when we run into one of these scenarios. System volumes, I think, is a brilliant design, and we do have the flexibility of changing between different sub-volumes. So we can change out our beeping, so you saw there voice prompts and things like that, so we can literally change out how loud all of these different things are. And like even specifics like Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, how loud or how quiet do we want things like the media screen, navigation, and a number of other things. So we have a ton of flexibility for the system volumes. I think more manufacturers should do this. I think it's a brilliant idea. We've got our speed-dependent volume as well. So as we start to speed a little bit on the highway, the volume will go up a little bit if we need it to. And then our startup volume limiter. So if we've got the volume cranked, we turn the vehicle off, and then we restart the vehicle, it's not going to play at that maximum level. And then we've got some radio noise there as well in order to get rid of some of the ambient noise. And then we can also do a reset to bring everything back to the factory's default screen instead. Moving back to our base radio, if we were to change out to our Sirius XM for a second, we now have a few other options. So we've got our live option there. We can save out as we saw the other stations. We've got our enter channel, and we've got some other options for our menu. So we've got our display off, available channel list. We've got our favorites. We can delete preferences, and then we've got back to our main sound settings there instead. We do have a QR code as well for our manual. So we can literally just push that, and then all we have to do is just pop open our phone. We're just going to scan, as you can see there. So open this Hyundai link. And we're going to open up, and look at this. So we've got our user manual there as well. So it is nice that we do have the physical manual, but we do also have the flexibility of being able to jump into this main menu there instead. And we can look at everything on our phone, and literally everything is on there, which I think is a great idea. And then we can go to our home screen there instead, which brings us back to this main screen. Now, as I mentioned, this is going to be the base screen, which does give us wireless Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, which we'll set up in just a moment. But this is the way that this main screen is going to look. We've got what station's currently playing. We can turn the media on or off. We've got our all menus there, which is exactly that. It's every available feature and option inside of the screen. Moving back home, we've got our phone and our setup. options. So let's start off with adding in a phone. So we just hit add phone, and we've got a few options there. So we've got our hands-free calling, our Bluetooth audio. So if you want to be connected just to listen to audio, we can do that without our phone actually being connected either. So we can select either or, we press OK.
Turn Bluetooth on from your device in order to search. On your device, select the name that matches vehicle name.
There we go. So we can pair up there as well. So we're just going to hit pair. Do we want to allow our contacts and favorites to sync up? Sure, why not? Perfect. And we're going to give that one a second, and it's connected there. And look at this. So it's connecting, but do we want to use CarPlay with our Tucson there as well? Yeah, let's do it. Super simple to look at this. Do we want to connect? Yes. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so we just have to make sure we hit next there. And it's making sure, obviously saying, let's make sure you're charging up. Hit OK. Perfect, and we're connected. Look at this. Super simple. And then as you can see there, we are now fully connected. So we've got our Apple Maps, we've got Google Maps, and we've got Waze. So even though this base screen doesn't have factory navigation, we still do have the flexibility of being able to use Google Maps, Apple Maps, and Waze directly through the screen. So it is nice, as you can see there, we have a nice layout. And then one of the great things is that we do also have the flexibility of jumping into our settings. We can go general, find our car, we go customize, and we can literally drag and drop. So if you have a tendency to listen to your podcast more, we can bring that to the top of the list. Audiobooks, same idea. If you've accidentally deleted something, it does show up to the very bottom here, but if you've kind of moved things around a little bit too much, you're not really a big fan of the way things look, we can just hit reset in order to bring us back to our factory default layout there instead. Pressing back, we're back to our main screen there instead. So it is nice that we've got so much flexibility. If we press this Hyundai button, this gets us back to that main screen instead. We can push Apple CarPlay to get back into CarPlay. And then if we turn the vehicle off, we turn it back on again, we will have that same prompt to reconnect to our CarPlay settings there instead. We can just go to our setup screen there. As you can see, we've got a few other options. So we've got our device connections and a few other things. So in order to be able to add in another device, so if you had multiple phones you needed connected, we could just press home to do it. We can hit phone, and that's going to bring us into our main screen because we are on the CarPlay side. We go back home, and if we go setup for a second there, we go device connections. We've got Bluetooth connections or phone projection. So Bluetooth connections, as of right now, I'm just connected to CarPlay. So I would need to connect to Bluetooth there. Fast, as you can see, I have to actually remove CarPlay for a second. So we're going to go there, disconnect. And it's disconnected Apple CarPlay. Now we jump back in, we've got Bluetooth, and then we can reconnect to that Bluetooth there setting instead. So we can do hands-free calling or Bluetooth audio. Let's actually, for the sake of this, connect to both of them again. Perfect, and we are now fully connected again. So rather than being hooked up through Apple CarPlay, it's strictly going to be a Bluetooth connection instead. So we could use YouTube app, and we can use things like Spotify, LiveX Live, and things like that to listen to Bluetooth audio on this thing instead. So we don't actually need to be hooked up through Android Auto and Apple CarPlay to listen to our audio. We could literally just set up through Bluetooth instead if we wanted to, just listen to our phone audio instead. So you've got some flexibility there. And then from this screen, actually, let's hop back for a second because we've got a series of other options. So connection priority, Bluetooth prompts, and a number of other things. But connecting an iPhone device and going through Apple CarPlay is literally that simple inside of this vehicle. Now, setting up an Android device is literally the exact same process. So if you weren't on the screen, we could go back to that main homepage there instead. We can go into the phone, but we want to actually go to our setup for a second. We go into device connections, Bluetooth connections, and we've got the iPhone that's currently connected, but we can also add in a new device. And same idea, do we want to have phone and Bluetooth audio or just one or the other? We're going to hit OK. There we go. So disconnected the iPhone, and it's going to connect.
Turn Bluetooth
there we go.
on from your device in order to search. On your device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
That's what I was waiting for. So we've got Tucson along the very bottom there. Perfect. Pairing request. These pins match up, so that's okay there. Hey, Tucson is now connected. It supports Android Auto, so literally that simple. We just kind of follow through. I love it. I love how simple it is. Do we want to allow access to contacts, etc.? We will get to that one in a second. So what we want to do is continue here first. And do we want to allow contacts? Sure, why not? Boom, look at this. We are fully connected there. I love it. We can press the main screen here in order to go to our settings. We've got our traffic, guidance, things like that. We can button press here in order to be able to get into our podcast, or we can jump back into our Google Maps instead. Notification Center, and then our Google Assistant. Now, we do have the option of pushing the button on the steering wheel there in order to get to our Google Assistant. We can also do things because we're in Google. If we had our Siri Assistant enabled, we'd have that flexibility on the Apple side of things. But we could also say, okay, Google, and we can pull up our Google Assistant that way instead. We push the button along the very bottom here to get to our main summary screen. So we've got our podcast, maps, and a few other things there as well. So it is nice that we've got so much flexibility. Along the very top, we can see what our connection signal's like, as well as our current battery level for the phone. So it is very straightforward setting up both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay inside of this thing. We can go back to our main screen, jump into our setup there if we want to, and if we go to our connections, I want to show you something for a sec. We're going to disconnect CarPlay for a second. Or Android Auto, I should say. We go into our Bluetooth, and we've got a few other options. So we go into our connection priority. So as of right now, I've got both of my phones connected. We can literally just do a drag and drop. So if the vehicle recognizes both phones, who is it going to try to connect to first? So we can literally just kind of do a drag and drop there for our own personal preferences. We've got our Bluetooth voice prompts as well, so we can mute them out if we want. We can go to a privacy mode, or we can do a full reset as well. If we go into our Bluetooth connections, we can add in another device, or if we hit delete devices, we can mark individual ones, we can unmark, we can mark all if we'd like. We hit delete and delete. And as you can see there, so first one's disconnected, and there we are. And it literally is that simple to be able to set up a phone inside of this vehicle. All right, now from this main screen, if we jump, so we can go back if we want to, we can just press the home screen there and going into our all menus. So we've got a series of other options. We do have Blue Link for things like vehicle diagnostics, maintenance, and things like that. You do need, so if we go diagnostics for a second there, so you need to actually activate it when you purchase your vehicle in order to do it. But it will be nice because you could use Blue Link for connecting to your phone in order to be able to do certain things through your phone there as well. Moving back, we can jump into our radio, which again, we saw we can push the button up there instead if we wanted to. Moving into our all menus, we've got a few other options. So this one right here is media, which is grayed out. So we can push media there or there. But as of right now, there's no media currently connected. So we have the option of connecting our phones through Bluetooth audio if we wanted to. If we had an iPod, we can connect that way as well. And then we've got a few other options. So if we had a USB stick with MP3s, we could literally plug that in order to be able to listen to MP3s there instead. We've got Android Auto and Apple CarPlay that are now grayed out because I've removed both of them from the vehicle. We've got our voice memo there as well, and as you can see, we've got one voice memo, and we can also record other memos if we wanted to. Moving back, we've got our quiet mode. So quiet mode is neat because, there we go, so all volumes are going to be lowered down if we need to. So if you've got sleeping kids in the back there, we can quiet out the rest of the vehicle. Moving to the side, we've got our valet mode, which we do need Blue Link in order to be able to activate that, but that's going to lock the screen out so that we don't have to worry about a valet potentially going through all of our different settings and things like that. We've got our bass setup there as well. Moving into our sound settings first, so we've already seen all of these ones, so adjusting our treble, mid-range bass and things like that. We've got our device connections, which same thing, we've already seen how all of this stuff works. We've got our display and a few options that are available there. So we've got our illumination. So as of right now, it's locked into the nighttime mode. We've got our daylight mode, nighttime mode, or we can do an auto mode where the vehicle's automatically going to flip us between the daytime or the nighttime, just depending on how bright it is outside. We can also link it out to our cluster there, and then we can also adjust manually that way if we want to. So it is kind of nice that we've got so many different options available there. We've got our blue light filter, which I love this option. So blue light filter is great because later on at night, you can literally schedule when you want the blue light filter to turn on. So if you tend to drive home later on at night because of work, you can literally have it set up so the blue light filter comes on at certain times of the day so that it's just easier on your eyes. We've got our screensaver, which a few different options there, because if we go display off, nothing there. But we've got the option for an analog or a digital clock. The analog clock, we've got a few different looks. So let's say if we switch out to this nice little watch face there, we go display off. Look at this. So it is nice that we've got so many different options that are available there. So if you want a little bit more of a calming screen, you've got the flexibility to do that. We've got our home screen there. So same idea, we can kind of adjust what we want showing up in individual places there as well, which I love the fact that we've got that option and we can set so many different things up there as well. Media notifications. Do we want a notification when we change out our different media there? Extended rear camera use is an option there as well. And then we've got a reset. So we could reset this thing back to our factory default instead. So if we've gone through too many different things, we've messed with our settings too much, or if you're even just selling the vehicle, we can just do a reset there if we'd want to. And as you see there, a few other options. So we've got our display, we've got 3 individual buttons there. So 2 on the steering wheel, and then we've got our 1-star button there as well. So as you can see, we've got a custom button, and we can literally have it set up for whatever we'd like it to do. So as of right now, it's set for display off. So if we press it, display goes into that quiet mode instead. We can have it turn into our phone projection. We can have it for the home screen instead. So we push that button, and it's going to launch us back into our home screen. Actually, it probably wasn't a good idea for me to do that, but we've at least got that available as an option. So you can literally set this up for what you'd like it to, and it's the same idea with the steering wheel as well as for that mode button. So the mode button on the steering wheel changes between all of our active sources. So I always recommend just keep all of these open, because if they're available sources, it'll flip you between every available option. We've got some general settings, which we've got our model number, we've got our system info, so we've got storage capacity there, we've got our user manual, and we can do a factory reset. We've got our date time, so we've got our daylight savings time option there. We've got our 24-hour mode there as well, which daylight savings time, I think that's actually right. It's 3:27, perfect. We can switch out to our military time there instead, and then we can also change out the time zone that we're in. Our languages, we've got English, French, Spanish, and Korean. Some different options for our keyboards there as well. We've got our Blue Link settings, so we can enroll in there easily as well if we'd like to, and that gives us the flexibility to do things like remote start and things like that using our cell phone. Wi-Fi, we've got a few different options there as well, so we can generate a new Wi-Fi password if we wanted to. And we've got some other options for our climate control settings. So we've got our rear circulate air. We've also got our ventilation there as well. We can schedule when we want it to ventilate out. And then we can also do an auto defrog or a defrost option there as well. So we do have quite a few options that are available as a default there. Moving back into our setup there, and we can go into our all. I think that was it. Setup, we've done that. Perfect. We've got some base notifications, which again requires Blue Link, and then we can just button press there to get into our manual instead. So quite a few different options, but very simple all at the same time. We do have a few other buttons along the side there. So as I mentioned, we can press this in order to be able to seek between stations. If we want to, we can also tune this way. And we can also press in order to go to different options there as well. So we can save these things as a default. We can jump into our setup there if we want. As we start to move down, we have an interesting little setup for our climate control. So we could literally just push the auto if we want you to bring it to life, or we can just kind of press up and down in order to change it out. We do have dual zone climate control inside of this thing. And we can press the sync button to default the passenger to whatever the driver's side setup is. We can turn the system off as well if we'd like to. We've got our front defroster, air conditioning. We can either increase or decrease the fan speed there as well if we want to. I love the styling of this. It's so neat. We can have it change between our windshield, face, or feet. We've got our diffuser and then our rear defroster as well. So quite a few different options there. And as we start to move down a tiny little bit, so let me do this, and down we go a tiny little bit. Shifter forward, but look at this. So we've got a few individual USB ports there. So this one is going to be for our data. So if we wanted to do something like hook up an MP3 player or an old school iPod, whatever the case may be, we can do that. We do have a 12-volt power point there as well, and a regular power USB. So if you need multiple devices connected to charge up, we can easily do that. Now this thing also does support wireless charging. So as you can see there, lets us know that we currently do have a phone that is connected in order to be able to charge up. So it is very nice. We remove the phone, and in a few seconds, it's now gone. We do have our shifter there, and you just kind of can make it out. We've got our park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then we can also flip over into our manual mode, and we can literally go up and down to be able to change gears out that way if we wanted to. As we move down a little bit more, we do have a series of other options there. So we've got our drive terrain mode there, and the drive mode, we have our little shifter there to kind of move between different modes. We've got our eco, normal, sport, and our smart mode. We can switch it out to terrain instead to go between a few different options. So a single button press in order to be able to change it out to different modes there if we'd like. Next up, we've got our auto start stop button, so we can turn this thing on or off if we need to. Hill descent control. We've got our auto hold setting, which is a great one. So the auto hold setting is neat because if we have the auto hold setting on, we can literally flip the vehicle into drive. We can take our foot off the brake, and it's literally going to hold the vehicle in place. Throw it back into park, and we can turn that setting off again. We do have this button in order to go between different options for our rear view camera. So we've got our main camera there and a few other options. We've got our electronic parking brake there as well. We pull up in order to turn the parking brake on, and then we hit the brake and we push down in order to turn it off. We can just kind of make it a few other buttons there as well, and that's going to be for our seats. So we do have heated driver passenger seats inside of this thing in the first row. These buttons here would be ventilated seats. So in some of the trims, we would have the option for ventilated seats, and those ones would show up there. And then we also have a heated steering wheel button, so we can easily turn this thing on or off if we need to. Now, as we start to move up overhead, we do have our manual dimming or potentially an auto dimming rear view mirror, just depending on the trim that we're in. We've got our tow mode, our SOS mode there as well. And then we also have the option of controlling our cabin lights. And then we've also got all of our cabin lights on or off, whether our doors are open or not. Look at this. Oh, let there be light. So good. So one button press opens it up a little bit there, so it's a fairly decent open. And then that's as far as it'll go. So we don't have the option of opening it up any more than that, but we can pull that forward there. So single button press to open and close, which is great. Oh, that's neat. Look at this, look at this. Oh, that is so cool. Interesting, okay. That's kind of neat. So single button press to open it up, close it, etc. Can we vent this thing out? Ah, you can. So cool. All right, so if you actually push this button up, it'll vent it out instead. So if you want to create a little bit of airflow, you can easily do that. Button press to close it, and then single button press. This is so neat. Down it goes. I love it. Super simple, but great setup there. Up overhead, driver passenger side, we do have some handles here as well, which is great. So things get a little rocky in here, you've got some added support. We do have our visor there as well. We've got a little business card holder to the side, vanity mirror with our light control. We're up overhead as well. And then one of the cool things about this is that it extends out and it blocks everything. Look at this. So if things are a little bit bright, you're blocking everything from your field of view, which is great. You blocking everything. You're like, I can't see the traffic next to me, but I'm not blinded by the light anymore. It's so ridiculous. All right, click that, log it back into place. But overall, this thing is fairly nice. Nice comfort. I do love some of the stylings, like some of the small points inside of this vehicle. Like along the driver passenger seat there, we've got a little plastic part along the top there as well. And then that aluminum finish. So they've taken the aluminum finish from certain parts and they've built it into the seat as well. It looks absolutely beautiful. Like I love what they've done with the seats here. The overall comfort and styling in this thing is pretty nice. Moving into the second row of the vehicle, I love how much space is in this second row. So I was in the Kona last week and like that thing was a little bit tight for somebody my size. Like I'm 6 feet tall, but I've got the driver passenger seat set up for somebody who's 6 feet tall. I'm 6 feet tall and I've got a great amount of knee space, great amount of foot space, and up overhead is a little tight. I've got about, I'd say 2.5 inches of headspace there. Now this one does have the panoramic sunroof, which I think it looks pretty dang nice. Like, I love that panoramic roof, how it just opens things up really nicely. We've got our sunshade there, which would be controlled up in the front, but we'll get to that one in just a second. Now, we do have a few different options for seat choices and things like that, like cloth seats, leather seats, etc. But the seat itself is actually very comfortable. 2 different adjusting levels there as well, and with my head back, it's pretty nice. And one of the cool things about these seats, so they are locked into place, so we don't have the option of moving them forwards or backwards at all, but we've got a little lever along the side. So that one that we would pull in order to fold the seat, we can also extend it back the other way. We can pull it, and we can actually recline the seats. I mean, you're going on distance trips, you want to fall asleep, whatever the case may be, you can easily do that in the second row, which I think is absolutely a great thing. Now, along the back here, driver passenger side, we do have some pockets there to store a few things. We do have a few power points in the back of the armrest, so 2 USB ports, and they're just traditional USB ports. And then we also do have a few cup holders back here. So 2 cup holders there, so pretty straightforward. And then moving up overhead, so we do have our grab handles there along the driver passenger side. Both sides also do have a little light, and along the driver's side there, we do have a little hook as well. So quite a few things back here, but that's just the base feature set. The styling is something in and of itself because we've got a nice look. I'm just gonna do some ASMR for you guys here. So we've got a few like plastic cloth pieces there as well. A nice black and silver highlight, which looks great. And that's just along the door itself. Moving down, we've got this beautiful black look there. So nice plastic feel, nice highlights along the side. And then we've got a little bottle holder along both the driver and the passenger side. Filling up fuel inside of the Tucson is also very straightforward. So along our driver's side there, click it, open it up and fill up and you're good to go. Now in the regular gas version of the vehicle, it's a non-locking door. So something to think about there. And it doesn't matter if you're in the 2.5 liter like what we've got here, or if you're in the 1.6 liter hybrids, whatever the case may be, you're only gonna have to use 87 octane. So just your regular fuel in order to fill up, which is definitely a nice thing. following some of the body lines that we saw in the front of the vehicle. So along that front end of the bumper, we had that nice silver look. Same idea in the back here as well. So we've got that nice look throughout the body of the vehicle there. But the lamps in the back, I absolutely love the styling of this. Like, it's super aggressive. Like, it's kind of almost got like a diamond weave type of look in there, which does carry forward in some of the styling inside of the vehicle as well. But typical Hyundai styling, we've got our badge along the back there, nice Tucson badge there, and then because this is the all-wheel drive, we've got our H-track along the right-hand side there as well. Now, one of the cool things about the Tucson, it does have a rear wiper, but it's hidden right along the very top, so just underneath that top lip there, which is always a nice thing. The Tucson does also have a decent amount of towing capacity, so if you were to get a hitch receiver installed from the dealership, aftermarket through like U-Haul or Canadian Tire, whatever the case may be, you're gonna be able to pull up to 2,000 pounds in this thing. Next up, taking a peek at the key fob of the vehicle. So we've got our typical Hyundai styling there. So we've got our Hyundai badge along the very back. Front end of the fob, we've got our lock button, our unlock button, our panic alarm, as well as our remote start. We also do have our emergency access key along the very back, so we can just pull this thing out and click it, lock that back into place. Now, remote starting the vehicle is also very straightforward. We just have to make sure that we lock up first, and then we're just going to press and hold the bottom button there. So as you can see there, remote start is now active. Canceling remote start, we just press that bottom button there once. And as you can see, remote start is now canceled. Now, getting inside of the trunk of the Tucson is fairly straightforward. We don't have a release on the fob itself, but we do have one just inside the vehicle. And then we also have the option in the back here as well. We can push the button, so just right underneath there. So we can push that in order to be able to open it up. Up it goes. Now, cargo dimensions for the vehicle are going to be showing up, and we do have a nice amount of width, depth, and height to this thing. Like, actually a surprising amount. I actually kind of love how much space is in the back here. But taking a look, we have a few different measurements and dimensions that are going to be coming up, specifically on the height, because we've got one loading area height, but we go in and we have a little bit of extra space. But one of the cool things, and I've seen this in quite a few Hyundai vehicles, which I just think is a brilliant design, we've got a tray in the back here that can move to a different level. So we can literally just push this down in order to be able to go to a lower level instead. And when we do that, we get about an extra inch and change roughly of loading area space, which I think is absolutely brilliant. We have a few different ways that we can fold down the second row seats as well, which is definitely a nice thing. Because we could just do the traditional hopping inside in order to be able to fold down this way. And down the seat goes, and it's pretty straightforward to do that. But one of the cool things about this vehicle is that we also do have a few latches along both sides, so the driver passenger side, and we can literally crank that in order to have the seat go down. And as you can see there, we do have a nice amount of depth when we have that second row folded down. And then, as I mentioned, we've got this tray that we can slide into different levels, so if you need a flatter fold, you've got the capability to easily do that. So if you're storing boxes or buggies and things like that, you can do that without having to worry about the lip in the middle there. A few other things to point out about the trunk area here. So we do have both of those latches along the side. We do have the option for a sunshade as well, so we can easily install that as an aftermarket accessory. But we do have a 12-volt power point along the driver's side, so 180 watt, which is nice because we can easily plug some things in if we need to. And we've also got a series of different tie downs and things like that. If you've got cargo nets and things like that, you want to use in the back end of this thing. Now, I did mention this tray earlier, so we can literally take this thing, we could actually leave it in and we can just fold it up if we wanted to, which is kind of neat. But if we pull the whole tray out, super straightforward to do that, by the way. But taking a look, we do have our mini spare tire there, which is always a nice thing to have an actual spare rather than the traditional goop that we're finding in a lot of vehicles. We've got our jack and all the necessary components there as well, so we could change the tire ourselves. But one of the cool things about the Hyundai lineup is that we also do have a roadside assistance. So it almost works like CAA or AAA down in the States, where if your car breaks down, you need to get towed to a dealership, whatever the case may be, you can call them up. But it is good to know that if you wanted to, you could just call up roadside assistance in order to tow you to a dealer rather than having to worry about changing the tire out yourself if you really don't want to. It is a little nippy out there. It's like 4 degrees outside, which means that it's t-shirt weather still technically for Canadians, but it's a little bit cold at the same time. And now time for the fun part. So I'm going to be taking this thing for a little bit of a spin to see how it handles. Let's do it. Now this is just the regular gas engine. Technically, so the Tucson does have 3 available options. We've got either this 2.5 liter, there's the 1.6 liter turbocharged hybrid, or the 1.6 liter turbocharged plug-in hybrid. So you've got a few different options there, series of different horsepower, torque specs, and things like that, just depending on which version of the vehicle you've gone with. All right, so I've got the heated seats turned on. It's just a necessity right now, as well as the heated steering wheel. Let's do this. Okay. I was like, why is it revving so high? I'm in sport mode, as always. Like, that's normally where I always start off, but that's why we were getting that higher RPM just right at the start there. Now, I am actually very surprised how comfortable these seats are, but how nice the interior and the exterior specifically, like some of the body moldings and the way that the body design looks, I think is fairly sharp, especially compared to some other vehicles that I've seen recently. It is fairly nice. And then typical Hyundais, oh, the heated steering wheel is turned on right now, and it is around the whole wheel. Oh, that is so nice. That is so nice, especially on days like today when it's a little bit nippy outside. All right, and this thing is more than broken in as well, so it's respectable. For a 2.5 liter non-turbocharged engine, that's not too shabby. 187 horsepower, 178 pound-feet of torque. I hope I don't have to do a test on this at all. I've done like so many cars, it's like, which one is which again? It gets kind of crazy. It gets like a little crazy. Smart cruise. That is so cool. I love it. 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 Down to a complete stop. Such a neat feature. So that was kind of neat, right? I do kind of find it interesting that we've got wireless Android Auto, Apple CarPlay in the lower trims, and it's wired in the higher. I think it should probably be the other way, but here nor there. I do love the fact that we've got the Android Auto, Apple CarPlay settings regardless. But if you ran into any problems, or if you have any questions, drop down in the comment section below and let me know. More than willing to talk you through any issues that you may be having. But if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your social networks. And until I see you next time, take care. Inside of the hybrid versions of the vehicle, it'll be a lockable cap, and that's got to do with pressurization. But very straightforward, we do have our click there. Now, one of the very interesting things about the Tucson is how you actually fold these second row seats down, because we could do with a traditional